Rise for Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chairman Weigel.
Here.
Judy O'Connell.
Here.
Robert Howard.
Here.
Steve Bowers.
Here.
Rachel Manila.
Here.
Lawrence Staley Perry.
Here.
Denise Winfield.
Here.
Okay, we have a form. We have minutes from June 14th.
Motion to approve.
Second. Any additions or corrections? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. New business. Case 6234M. Kim, you going to give us that? Okay.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Weigel and committee members. Zoning case 6304-M went before the Planning and Zoning Commission and was approved unanimously with a 7-0 vote on July 5th. Zoning case 6304-M takes place in Wilton Township. The applicant requests an amendment from R3 to A1 for the purpose of consolidating the property with an adjoining A1 property to the north, which is also owned by the applicant. The general location of the property is east of Quigley Road and north of West Joliet Road in Wilton Center. Staff recommends approval of zoning case 6304-M, and that concludes staff analysis.
Any questions by committee? Any objectors to this change? We have a motion to
approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next case, 6306M.
Thank you. Zoning case 6306-M2 went before the Planning and Zoning Commission and was approved with a 7-0 vote. The case takes place in Crete Township. The applicant would like to request a map amendment from A1 to E1 for parcel 1 and a map amendment from R1 to E2 for parcel 2. For the purpose of constructing a 7,200 square foot course arena, the general location of the subject property is east of State Line Road and north of Danne Road. The property is comprised of 2 3-acre parcels with a total of 6 acres that are used in conjunction for the petitioner's residence and the keeping of horses. Upon approval of the amendments, the parcels are to be consolidated into a single E2 parcel. Staff recommends approval of map amendment from A1 to E2 for parcel 1 and R1 to E2 for parcel 2. This concludes staff analysis.
Okay, questions by committee?
So I was just wondering, why are they going to an E, from A to an E and R to an E rather than staying in ag? Is it a size thing or what is the difference?
The parcel size is deficient. It does not meet 10 acres.
Okay.
And it also does not meet the frontage.
Okay, so then they're going to the E to versus state. Okay,
Correct.
thank you, that's what I wanted to know, thank you.
Any other questions? Any objectors to this change? We have a motion to approve the
Motion to approve.
Second.
parcel 1, A1 to E2. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion from A1 to E2 for parcel 2. Motion? Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case, 6312 SV.
Thank you. Zoning case 6312-SV takes place in Florence Township. The case was heard by the Planning and Zoning Commission on July 5th and was approved with conditions with a 4-3 vote, and also with a variance for animal care areas that was granted by the Commission. Letters of support were distributed to you this morning for your review. The applicant requests a special use permit for animal care and boarding. for the purpose of allowing a dog foster care home. The general location of the subject property is north of Wilmington Peatone Road and east of South Indian Trail Road. The property is zoned E2 with 2.5 acres in lot area. The surrounding area is zoned E2 and A1. Staff recommends approval with 5 conditions. That concludes staff analysis.
Any questions by committee?
I just got a comment.
Yeah, these foster programs for these animals, I think it's a great thing. I think the owner should be commended for doing this. It's I know a lot of, a friend of mine actually does it. A lot of times they deal with handicapped animals, animals that have been abused, that type of thing. In this case, a friend of mine actually, they have a couple of blind dogs, and then it takes a lot of time, a lot of care, and a lot of commitment to do this. So again, I think it should be commended. Thank you.
Any objectors to this change?
Yes.
Can we come down to the podium? Well, state your name, please. Could you push the button at the bottom of the speaker then?
Mike O'Donnell.
Okay.
I'm a neighbor, and I'd like to get some clarification. For the variance meeting, they indicated that it was going to be 200 feet from the nearest dwelling. Again, the 60 feet keeps popping up.
Staff, can you explain that?
I apologize. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, at the variance meeting, the setback for the, they were asking for 500 to 60 feet. At the variance meeting, they gave them 500 to 200 feet from the nearest dwelling.
That is correct.
All right, 60 feet's showing up on.
The variance was approved from 500 to 200 feet at the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay.
So the actual variance that they were granted, they're now able to keep the foster dog, the exercise areas 200 feet from the nearest off-site dwelling.
Okay.
We don't have to vote on that today. It'll stay at 200 feet. Is that right?
That's correct. Today, before you is just the special use permit.
David?
And sir, the reason that that carried forward is a function of the software that is utilized to track the agendas within the county, and we'll follow up on that and make sure that we get that adjusted correctly.
Okay. And then foster care, as boarding keeps arising. If you look at the line above where the 500 to 60 feet is, boarding dogs and foster care are 2 different things. Boarding dogs is dogs are getting dropped off weekly, daily. So I just want some clarification on that.
Could you clarify that, David? Is that just the way our ordinance is set up?
So the applicant is requesting an animal foster care home. Our ordinance classifies foster care under the animal care facility, which is boarding and kenneling.
But this does not allow boarding. They're just asking for foster care, right?
It's classified under the same classification in our zoning ordinance.
David?
What I would suggest, if it would make the gentleman more comfortable, the committee could add a condition restricting it to the animal rescue operation and restricting it to not allow and prohibit boarding.
Okay.
It does list as one of the conditions, though, no commercial boarding can occur. So it's clearly spelled out. And then I think that's up to 4 additional foster dogs, was what they're saying.
Okay, so it's already in the condition?
Yes, that's my understanding, unless there's...
Can you confirm that?
Yes, number 3 of the conditions, no commercial boarding may occur.
Okay. Any other questions?
Was that your objection?
Well, other than, moved out there now, they have 9 dogs next to me.
So your objection is to the facility as a whole?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for your comment.
Yep.
Okay.
I just wondered, I don't remember reading it, maybe it's in there. So they have a fence where these dogs stay in all the time, and they can't run free, right?
The fence is addressed to is number 2, solid or buffer fence.
That is correct, and one of the conditions also is that they are required to have a solid fence and to provide a solid fence or landscaping. And the applicant proposes to put screening with a solid row of evergreen.
Okay. Are there any other objectors? Okay.
I have one question.
Question?
Did the applicant agree that they wouldn't board any dogs? Because it would seem like if you're going to take foster dogs in, you need to have some kind of way of funding that at one point, unless you've got a lot of donations. You know, I'm just asking if the applicant was agreeable with that, because if I was the applicant, I would not be agreeable with it.
The applicant may want to speak on that topic. The applicant came to land use with the intent to keep foster care dogs. She works closely with the Will County Animal Control and aids in the adoption of dogs. She works on a case-by-case basis as needed. She doesn't operate like a kennel or a boarding facility. She keeps the foster dogs in her home like she would her own pets. They're there for a temporary period of time, and from what I understand, typically she would have 1 to 2 at a time, and then find homes for them, and then take on a new.
Correct. I'm just trying to ask if the applicant was agreeable to that one stipulation, because if I was the applicant, I would not be agreeable to that, because it would cost me a lot of money at one point to take care of these foster dogs. And I would want to, especially if our ordinance calls it boarding and kenneling. I'm just asking, if the applicant's agreeable, I got no problem. I just want to know if that's something that they were upset about or not.
Oh, not at all. Absolutely. The applicant was very agreeable and made it very clear that she does not intend to operate.
That's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions, we have a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Next case, 6314 SB2. Kim.
Zoning case 6314-SB2 went before the Planning and Zoning Commission on July 5th and was approved along with 2 variance requests with a 7-0 vote. Zoning case 6314-SB2 takes place in Green Garden Township. The applicant requests a special use permit for the conversion of a non-conforming towing business that has been in operation since 1974. For the purpose of allowing the construction of an accessory building to store equipment and trucks that are associated with his non-conforming towing business. The proposed building is considered expansion to the use. Expansion of a non-conforming use may not occur without a conversion of the non-conforming use to a special use permit. The proposed accessory structure will exceed maximum building area, and again, that was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. The parcel is 2.5 acres in lot area, and the general location of the subject property is north of Stumple Road and east of South Center Road. Property is zoned A2. Zoning case 6314-SB2 went before the Green Garden Planning Commission. The township recommended approval with a 5-0 vote. Staff recommends approval with 12 conditions. That concludes staff analysis.
Any questions by committee? Any objectors to this change? Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion, and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Other business, extension of case 601602. This is zoning case 6217S. David, you want to give us an update?
Yes, Mr. Lambert, on behalf of Mrs. Riker, is requesting a 180-day extension of the special use permit. So that comes to you and then be transmitted to the board.
Any questions by committee? I have a motion and a second. Any objectors to this change? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Next item is the elder cottage housing. David?
Yes, the text was presented to the committee, which then sent it to the commission for public hearings. At the last planning and zoning commission held a public hearing regarding proposed text amendments for the ECHO provisions within the zoning ordinance. There were no public comments, and so therefore it is back to the committee for either further discussion or to the board for consideration.
Any questions by committee? Judy?
Okay, so the biggest change from what I could see is we're just taking it out as a right in making special use. No, I couldn't find any other wording changes. Is that true, David?
Yes, it's basically returning it primarily to the way it was before October 1, 2012, and now requires a special. It would require a special use permit.
Okay, and so the difference in, if it's a right underneath something, they could go ahead and, they still have to apply for a permit, right?
The way it is right now before the change is yes, if it's a permitted use or permitted accessory use, then they can apply for the building permit and provide to meet the ordinance requirements, they can obtain the permit.
And what's the time that would typically take?
The normal permit process, like initial review is 2 weeks, but it's not a very long process at all. It's a matter of weeks. The special use permit, yes, it is. The special use permit does take longer. There are notice requirements. Right now they can run between 45 and 60 days or longer for the zoning changes for the complete application.
Yeah, see, that's my only thing is that the length of time that it can take, 45 to 60 days. If you're in a situation and you want to move your parent out right away because the other parent was taking care of that parent has passed, and you need to get one of these cottages right away, you really don't, I don't know how you can wait 45, 60 days. That's my biggest concern with this, is that the time frame. I understand the issue is really with one situation. So one situation, we're going to make a big change for other people, and I know it's not very common. So since it's not very common, and there haven't been any other issues except this one situation, I would just like to, is there any way that if a situation like this came up, we could expedite it over other situations?
I mean, by all means, we try to take into account specific or special circumstances within the department. The only thing is we'd be constrained, just again, by notice provisions in the process.
Okay, great.
In this case, the case that obviously prompted all this, when the letters had gone out, the certified letters, there was a lot of objections. The red flags were popping up right away. If we did not change the process, however, if there was X amount of objections, then it would flip over to a special use? Is there something that we could do, or is that legally?
The only reason there were notices that were sent out with the particular site that's in question is because they were requesting variances for the property. If we have somebody who wants in the current ordinance that wants to install a permitted ECHO unit, there is no public notice. It just goes through the normal building permit process. There is no public process in that review.
So in that case, then there wouldn't even be different?
No.
Steve?
Well, the way it is right now, they still have to get permission every year, correct?
There is, yes.
So
there is
really
no
all
review.
we're doing is making it harder for somebody, by changing the law, we're making it harder for somebody to do it. But as long as right now, if they don't follow our rules right now, it's almost the same thing. So I don't see why we should even mess around with it. There's not that many cases to begin with, and we still have to have them go yearly to say, hey, this is what's going on, and get permission yearly. So I don't, it just seems to me like it's unnecessary.
I would have to say that I would not be in favor of this change, and here's why. It's an additional roadblock, and it's also a financial hardship, especially in these cases where there's extended care or you need supplemental care. It's cost prohibitive now to families. So I mean, and especially the majority of this happens in a rural area, semi-rural area, where someone has the room to actually move somebody out there, move this additional housing out there. And I just think that we should not put up any roadblocks against this, and I don't think we should make it any harder. I mean, it's hard enough the way it is, and I mean, 60 days, you know, that's a matter of life or death in a lot of these cases. I mean, you know, it's additional, you know, if you can spend more time with mom or dad or grandma and grandpa or whoever it is, I think it's, you know, we shouldn't be as a governmental body stopping that kind of a use on your own property. So that's my personal belief on it. Thank you.
Jim?
You know, I know that probably this committee has not dealt with very much echo housing. Because it really doesn't come along that often. But every time it's come along, there's been neighbors that have always expressed concerns. And the reason they were able to express those concerns was because it was a special use. And they had to have a public hearing. And people could give their opinion on what effect it may have on them and their neighborhood. Very little of this, by the way, goes in rural areas, agricultural areas. Most of this housing has gone in suburban areas or state residential. So in the past, neighbors have come forward, and even though, and the reason it was changed just a couple years ago, because they were always all 100% approved, correct? But the difference is even though we approved them, those surrounding property owners could have some say on how they felt it was going to impact their property rights. Because, you know, it's just not about yours, it's about others. And generally there were concessions made and so forth. Now, you know, echo housing, it depends. You could have you want to say cottage. They're not cottages. Most people have dumped trailers out on those properties and say, here's a trailer. Most of them aren't very attractive. And here they plop it here. You know what, if it's next to your farmhouse, and you don't bother you, God bless you. But if you own a $500,000 house in a state residential, you're not crazy about it. And the thing that happens in the special use process is they go, well, we don't want to see a trailer. We want to see certain landscaping. So there's give and take between the adjoining property owners. I think that and I might point out, this has only been changed for the last couple of years. There wasn't a problem before. I think it was a better process. This idea that you have to have this emergency, that, you know, I just don't think that happens very frequently. You know, people who are looking to take care of the elderly, or people who are older who need some assistance, you know, they usually plan that. It's planned. It's not like suddenly come up. It usually happens after an illness, where they were been hospitalized or even in a nursing home for rehab. So those are the realities of it. I think to not let adjoining property owners be notified and not have them have some input on how it impacts them, I think is a mistake. So, you know, the committee will do what it wants to do, but I'm going to be supportive of the amendment with the full board. I just want you to know that. So, I mean, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, along that lines, I'm very familiar with two cases out by me, and both of those was with a senior citizen that basically either would have to go into assisted living, or actually the family was going to move them out to the rural area. And it wasn't necessarily a farm; it was a rural area, and it was a choice between $6,000 to $7,000 a month, or basically make an investment and move them over. And again, I think that we have to be careful too and sensitive to the word trailer. It's a manufactured home out there. I mean, and there's beautiful manufactured homes out there, and there's manufactured home communities that I think we have to be respectful of. Now, here's the other situation. if somebody builds a $500,000 house to me and says, well, basically, Bob's house is worth $130,000, you know what? That's really not conducive to the area. I think that's somewhat counteractive to property owners' rights also. So, again, and I'm just thinking about the senior
Conducive to the
citizen.
zoning, Bob, that's the point. It's not conducive to the zoning. If you want to make this all A1 and let it go in the rural areas without a process, you know, but it has to do with the type of zoning. You know, and this is going to be, you're allowing it in almost every type of zoning in this county. You know, and it doesn't apply. You don't apply it to the agricultural area. I don't want to really kind of debate this. And by the way, I understand the difference between trailers and manufactured homes, and these are trailers, many of them, just so you know. I've got them in my district. I go by them every day. So you leap to make this certain assumptions that is really not the case.
Again, I'm familiar with the cases with the seniors actually having to move them out. And in one case, I mean, and the reason why 60 to 90 days is very sensitive was she actually went in hospice. She just got everything done, moved in there, whatever, and she was able to actually, pass away peacefully in her own home. You know, and again, that's my personal, contact with this. And you might have a different view on it, and I respect your view, Mr. Mooses.
If somebody's at the end of their days in their hospice, move them in your house. I mean, you don't need to create additional.
There's also a husband involved too. He still actually lives there. So.
All right. He may or may not qualify.
Raise hands.
What type of zoning was the individual that we had the issue with last couple of months? What zoning was it?
A1, non-conforming A1.
So that was an agricultural. Thank you.
But understand he said non-conforming, which means it wasn't necessarily an agricultural area.
Right.
It was a non-conforming A1. So in other words, it could be an E2, E1, R1, R2, sure. And it just never was rezoned. I don't know.
So what I'm hearing is essentially, if this was a true conforming agricultural A1 lot, there would be less of a discussion or worry from the individuals versus if it was a non-conforming A1 or any other type of use?
Well, Mr. Tindall, I really think it'd be uncomfortable for us to suggest what is the basis of the objector's concern in this instance. There are multiple objectors who may have a variety of concerns.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about is the committee, would they look at an agricultural lot, a conforming, not non-conforming, a true A1 lot, would they have an issue if that came through the process through staff and anything outside of agricultural lots, like estate, residential? I understand what Mr. Muses is saying. You're sitting in a residential area and you got a 10,500 square foot lot, and that should require a special use.
I think what Ray is asking is this: can you make it a permitted use in A1,
in A1,
and a special use in other zoning districts?
Right. Unless the A1 is not conforming.
Yes, we can craft the ordinance in a lot of different ways. Consult with the state's attorney's office to make sure, the legality of it. But I anticipate, yes, that, we could include in the supplemental regulations the specificity that it has to be a A1 zoned lot, minimum acreage of 10 acres, cannot be non-conforming, and, make sure that we kind of draw the lines on the box.
Yeah.
So in essence, what I think is being suggested is, could we structure it in such a way that it would be, assuming it was a conforming A1 lot, that it would be remain by right. But if it were another zoning category, it would be only by special use.
That's correct, because what we're concerned about, if you craft the setbacks in such a way on a 10-acre lot, you're not going to really impede the rights of your neighbor when this trailer, let's just say a trailer or manufactured home, is 1,000 feet away or 500 to 300 feet away. But if you're in a non-conforming or a R2A district and you're 8 feet off the person's property line, I think it would be a little bit more an objection versus having that kind of distance between the sight lines.
Yeah, my question kind of goes along with what Ray's saying. You know, I listened to Mr. Moose's and, you know, it makes sense. But I'm looking at it, when you, under the new way we were talking about doing it, under the new ordinance, if I live in Homer Glen, I have a tiny little lot, and if I decided taking one of my sick relatives, I put him in a trailer in my backyard, it would take up my whole backyard. You know, so I see a problem.
There would still be some setback requirements.
So you still have all that. So in other words, in the other areas, you can't just put up something, you have to get something small enough to fit in them, which would probably be just like almost a pup tent in my yard. But,
why don't you just bring your in-laws in?
I watched this.
No, but what I'm getting at is, you know, we're talking about the side, you know, you bring a big trailer in a residential area. Well, they can just put a trailer in and there's no setbacks or nothing else. Now, with that really don't fit, but if it's, I like the idea of what we're just talking about. If it's A1, leave it alone. If it's anything else, let them go for it.
Under the scenario of a special use permit, there would still be the fundamental underlying requirement of certain setback requirements. If the person still wanted to attempt to obtain a special use permit but wasn't meeting those setback requirements, they would also have to go through a variance process.
Yes.
Now, what happens in the case when somebody says, like if I was to do something like that at my house, there's no way I could ever fit anything. So I say to myself, hey, you know what, I'm going to put a 20-foot, I'm a Homer Glen, put a 20-foot addition on my house, or a 15-foot addition on my house. And then that's going to be an echo house for some family person. And then that family person passes away, and that's attached to my house. What happens to the attachment to the house? You got to.
We got a category. That's the category.
There's related living provisions within the zoning ordinance for a second, really good related living unit in existing single-family residence.
Jim, did you have another question?
Well, the only thing I would say is that, you know, if they want to recommend that it would be permitted use in A1, I could see that, even though I might point out that A1 is not a residential zoning classification. So, you know, the people who live there are usually the people who operate farms or agricultural activities. So, yeah, but if the committee wanted to make that recommendation, I wouldn't object to it.
All right, Judy,
Yeah, I just have one more question. What is the cost for this, for the permit now, and what would the cost for the special use? What's the difference there?
The residential and special use permit fee starts at $675, and depending upon acreage. And
I would suggest that it'd probably be $675.
So remain at
It's based upon acreage, and what we do within request of its nature is we have a legal description that is reduced to a size where it keeps the cost down.
Okay, so that would keep the cost down for both situations if we approve this other one.
That would be if the special use was required. If we were under the current circumstances where special use is not required, you still had to get a building permit.
Right.
So there's the cost associated with that, and that would remain if you were also paying the fees for a special use permit.
Okay.
So there is no question that by adding on the special use requirement, you are going to increase the overall costs associated with pursuing this option.
Okay, thanks.
okay, would someone like to make a motion to make an amendment to our proposal to allow permitted use in the A1 zoning district?
I'll make that.
I'll second it.
Okay. Art, your question?
Well, maybe the process would be that you perhaps pass a motion that you're giving the sense of the committee to staff that that's a recrafted ordinance along the lines that's being suggested here is what you would like to see brought back to you next month. So that would give us time to review the absolute text and consult with the state's attorney and so on and so forth, rather than doing it just
We
kind of
also
on the
want
fly.
to see the setback.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we got a motion in the second for the A1 to allow permanent use, and they will bring this back next month. Any other questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so we'll bring this back next month with the changes proposed. Item 3, text amendment for lot, non-conforming lots. David?
Let me find the section of the ordinance I want to find.
This is an agenda item that we have assigned to committee to see if there was any interest in researching and possibly bringing a text amendment forward to address current parcels or lots within the county that are deficient on lot area and lot frontage. We do allow building permits to be issued on non-conforming lots that are deficient in lot area and frontage. That as long as they meet the required setbacks and all the other ordinance requirements. The only issue is that if they don't have a lot area or frontage, we can still issue the building permit. Again, if it's not conforming, means it's legally established but no longer compliant. And currently what that entails is that we'll research the parcel, and quite honestly, when we go back to looking at zoning and other ordinances prior to July 20, 1978, so there's over 30 years of a window here that we have to research to make this determination. And we do get quite a few zoning cases that either there's AVs or administrative adjustments or go through this planning and zoning commission dealing specifically with deficient lot area or frontage. And what we thought might be helpful is if the staff was to research using GIS to make, to get an idea within the different zoning districts, the number of parcels that may be deficient on lot area and lot frontage, and possibly setting a date more to near term that would establish those parcels as being legally established and no longer compliant, and giving them a non-conforming status. And one date that we had in our mind was possibly the October 1, 2012 date, which is the most recent comprehensive revision of the zoning ordinance. So what would that do? You'd probably bring in quite a few parcels into the fold of that status, and then not requiring a variance for lot area and frontage to get their building permit. And many instances these parcels have been there for 20 years, 30 years, 15 years, and it might just help streamline and facilitate an owner to get a building permit. Now again, I'm suggesting that we probably want to research this and give this careful consideration, because there might be instances where we want to set some kind of parameters on that. So that we take into account potential concerns of neighbors as well, if we're allowed it to happen. But I don't know if the committee has an interest in pursuing this, and take a look at it and see if there might be any text changes to do something like this.
Comments by committee? Rick?
I think this could be, it could be a double-edged sword, right? It could be a good and a bad thing. One of the things that I would say that could be a good thing is if the county were to be able to identify properties that are non-conforming in the agricultural zoning, so we could eliminate potentially, or go down a path to potentially eliminate some of the issues we had, like we had in the southern end of my district, when we had the cell tower exploiting the fact that we had a non-conforming use, and then trying to stick up a cell tower in a 1 acre or 2 acre lot versus what it should have been a 10 acre or with the legitimate setbacks. So I think in that case, I think we could find properties throughout everybody's district that can protect a lot of the residents in those districts from the exploitation of the unconforming zoning. On the other end, what is it going to do for us if we get a list of, hey, these 5 people are non-conforming, Is it gonna be used to then go after these individuals or after these companies? I don't wanna have, all of a sudden we get a list say, hey, this is non-conforming, and then we're knocking on their door asking for them to go through the entire process and spend a bunch of money either, if something's been there for 50, 60 years.
By no means is that the intent. The intent is actually to use this information to bring them to a non-conforming status, which will allow them to use their property.
Okay. Then I would be in favor of this 100%.
If I could just say, in some respects, this is prompted by two things. One, staff listening over the years to this committee and its fundamental desire to, if at all possible, not put up unnecessary, cumbersome regulations that inhibit ability to use your property. That's number one. And then number two, situations where a person comes forward and says, I've been living on this property for 20 years and you're telling me I can't put up a garage? That type of situation. And I just think it behooves us, your call, David just didn't want to go into what will be a pretty massive research effort unless you see some possible value. You only know once you see what you get as a result of the research project. But don't even want to get into it if you had some deep-seated reservations. But I think we're recommending to you that it has the potential for helping further pursue this general policy of the committee and the board to get out of the way, if at all possible, to develop.
Let me give you a specific example of how this might be useful. Let's say somebody has an R2 property. Minimum lot area is 40,000 square feet, and the minimum frontage is 150 feet. For some reason, they were able to record a property, not complying with the Plat Act, possibly by a quick claim deed, warranty deed, or something. Who knows? Let's say it was done in 2002. They came to our office today, they want to build a home. We'd have to say, no, you know what, you got to get variance, you got to get two of them. And it's $650, and it's going to be 60 days. If we set a date of October 1, 2012, and had some language that would somehow make those types of lots considered non-conforming, meaning legally established but no longer compliant, they came to our office, we'd say, okay, you know what, you're non-conforming, you have to meet all of the ordinance requirements except the lot area and frontage, and provided you do, you can have a building permit.
I'm for it.
I think it's a good idea.
Okay, it looks like the consensus is to go ahead and do that, make the research and
All right.
bring it back.
Okay, very good.
Next item is the vehicle fueling stations. David?
All right. At the last committee meeting, we had an extensive discussion on convenience stores are associated with gas stations, with car washes, multiple uses, and the language that was presented had constructed in a way that tied it to pump islands and truck fueling, and basically made it into a PUD. And the discussion then kind of centered around, well, is there a way that we can address the convenience store size by square footage? And I did look at different codes, and there's no, I guess, standard or prescribed ordinance requirements or model ordinances that I saw that set convenience store square footage sizes as a relationship to car washes and truck islands and diesel fueling as a way to control the size. Just generally, I looked on aerial photography and kind of put a footprint on some convenience stores that within the county that are associated with some of these types of facilities. And the square footages of the convenience stores range probably between 3,500 and 5,000 square feet. 5,000 being on a large end and 3,500 being on a small end. And two of those examples, one is the northwest corner of Harlan and 30 Speedway. That's about 3,500 square feet, and a little bit further north, City, I think it's the Speedway now, that was 5,500 square foot. and that's a little bit bigger store. So those are some examples of sizes on the convenience store square footage. So I don't know if if the committee wants to go into that depth as far as square footages, or is the language that was presented acceptable, and does the committee desire to go to public hearing on that? Again, it's just going back to the square footage of convenience stores. There's no, I guess, from a zoning standpoint, prescribed way to do that. It's just if the committee desires to do it, I guess, and incorporate the square footages into that process.
Any questions by the committee, comments? Jim?
I think the question, David, is this, is they're just not convenience stores. You mentioned the two as an example.
Mm-hmm.
One, they got 183rd Street in Harlem, which is a speedway. You said one of them you looked at. By the way, and it's a very large gas station.
It's big.
So the overall footprint of that station is large because they have a lot of gas pumps, but they don't have a lot of other activities on that site. Even though they say it's, I've heard that it's the busiest speedway in the country that's on a truck stop. If you ever go there must be 30 gas pumps. I mean, so there's a lot of activity as far as gas. A lot of people come on that property. But there's no other activities there. So it's handled pretty well. I mean, everything's contained within there. Now you mentioned like the speedway that goes a little further north. Well, now they have a subway in there, and there's a car washes there, a small car wash. And we're more used to seeing at gas stations, and that's why it's bigger. Because there's other businesses within that building. I think that's what drives this in part. And the reason I say that, for example, if you're in the Speedway, but basically it's on Harlem and Benton. If you're at the Speedway at Harlem and Benton, all of my district, by the way, so that's why I'm familiar with them. So if you go there, there's a Speedway, and there's a subway, and there's a convenience store, but there's sit-down areas. So now people go there and stay in there. Well, the parking requirement's going to be different, right? Because now there are people eating at Subway for lunch, so there might be 10 people not staying there. So those are the type of things I think you really have to look at. And from my view, a lot of it depends on how you contain the movement, and you have enough, you have the ability to contain your activities on your property, and not having spilling out into neighborhoods or into streets. So it's not so much, we keep using, that's part of the issue. They're just not convenience stores. I've been in, I'm sure everyone here has been in, you go into some of these large complexes, and they might have 3 or 4 different fast food operations running out of that store. Now those are unusual, close to interstates, but guess what runs through all of Will County? Interstates, plenty of them. So I do think you're going to see more of this kind of interstate type development, or just off the interstate. You mentioned those 2 facilities. They're both off a major interchange. I should say interchange, it's interstate, but interchange development. They're both off I-80 and Harlem, so in very close proximity to I-80. So there's I think it's a little more complex than that, I guess is what I'm saying. And I shouldn't use the word convenience store. It's only a portion. It's
one idea I have is that the draft text breaks us down into basically 3 tiers of intensity of, I'll call them gas stations. Minor, with you can't fill more than 8 vehicles simultaneously. Then you have a major, where you can't exceed 12 vehicles, and if you exceed 12 vehicles at the time, then it becomes basically a travel plaza. The motor vehicle fueling stations and travel plaza require, under the draft text, special uses. and those are as PUDs, all right, which then would require a development plan in the current ordinance, which is like a detailed site plan.
I
with
like the idea of
information,
PUD,
okay?
because everyone's different.
And then what we can do, though, is perhaps we can add some additional changes within what are called the like the supplemental use regulations, more detailed definitions of what those three are. And perhaps under the major vehicle fueling station and travel plaza, we can identify it and tie the fueling station when it's associated with these certain types of uses that are being described in a retail setting. And then that would encompass and develop those in that definition, which then would trigger the PUD through discussions in the process.
If I may.
It's not that.
Okay, go ahead.
I think the PUD, it's certainly something that most zoning authorities have used. All the municipalities use a PUD process for these types of developments. I like the idea of doing a PUD because that every development of this type, it has its own little nuances. So I think it gives staff the ability and county board the ability to look at how to make it work rather than saying yes or no. Because PUDs are a give and take type development. So I think it's a good, an appropriate process. Quite honestly, I think the counties will be behind in that type of process, and partly because you get to empower staff to do it, and I guess we never want to empower staff. But I think now's the time for these type of developments to let them work on these kind of projects.
Okay, Greg.
This type of development is the exact definition of what a planned unit development is for.
Yeah.
Whenever you have multiple, I don't want to say types of projects, multiple uses of projects in one envelope, this is exactly what the planned unit development is for. So by definition, there is no other option. We should be using this right from the get-go on these types of developments. My question is, on a planned unit development, couldn't it be done based on a formula? We talked about, I hear, well, what if they have a lot of pumps, and what if they have sit down, and what if they need parking? And if it was done basically on a formula, let's just say, I don't know, but just say 80% of the land mass area, they got 200,000 square foot of property, 80% is done, you got 160,000 feet of workable space, let's just say. For every time there's a booth in one of those restaurants, you need a parking spot or whatever you need, you start subtracting that out, and that'll basically tell you if you get more gas pumps, you have to be smaller in the other area. If you get a bigger car wash, you have to be smaller. Or if medium-sized car wash, you get more sit-down or more pumps. There's got to be some kind of formula that we could craft that would basically spit out what the end project could be a result without being too cumbersome on traffic or the residents around us.
Before the answer, I can only say one thing on that. I think it becomes difficult to dictate to the private sector or the business sector on what their model should be. I mean, they come in and they know what works for them, and so they'll say, well, we really can't use 30 pumps. It's only we're only going to. So I think that
that's fine.
I think it's a little difficult. That's what I'm saying.
More, but if they we have to have some kind of basis or idea with the parameters of what we're willing to allow them to have. And if it was all spelled out, they could mix and match, and if it works for them, great. If it doesn't, then they have to make some of the changes because they can't rely on our staff to continually design these things for them. I don't want to design them. No.
I think we could research such a formula. As everyone recognizes, the very nature of a PUD is to set up something more of a negotiated process so that the developer says, this is what I'd like to do, and then we come back. Of course, being a good negotiator and being business friendly, you would like, if possible, to give a certain degree of parameters up front so that the business person doesn't waste a lot of time coming up with a scheme that has no chance in hell of moving forward. So I think we can work on that. But I just feel the need to kind of remind the committee that we felt as staff that we were being given by the board some degree of urgency to start moving forward with this matter. And last time we were together, we were discussing this model that involved a PUD for this specific matter. And the question that you were being asked, and the question you'd be asked today, is it's not final. It's certainly not final. But is it cooked enough now to put it out for public hearing? And then we'll hear from business, we'll hear from a lot of people, and it'll come back, and undoubtedly then there'll be some fine tuning of the bill or of the ordinance. But are we at a stage where you feel comfortable enough to go forward? The reason we didn't go forward last time was that some members brought up concerns, if not about the general SUP concept, some reservations about whether it would be too restrictive on the size of the convenience store component. That's why we deferred action. David attempted to do some more research to see if there are any industry standards emerging or established on this subject, and he's sharing with you today that it's not. It's a very flexible, evolving area. So I guess, not wanting to rush anything, you take as much time as you want, but I think the real question is the language sufficient at this point and consistent enough with the general direction that you want to go that it's ready to put it out for hearing?
Yeah, I just got a couple comments. This is went full circle. Originally, my comment is basically this should be private sector driven. We should not be in a designing phase or looking to see what's coming down the road. If we were, we could probably sell those ideas. We wouldn't have a revenue problem, because basically with the evolution of the gas station now is probably a corner grocery store. And years ago it was a corner grocery store. It went through a hill metamorphosis, and now we're actually moving back towards that. And you brought up the one on 183rd there. That's an interesting spot. That technically is a travel plaza, but there isn't anything there for travel. Basically, it's a gas station. Yep. And they sell some, pop in there or whatever, some sandwiches or whatever. So I just think, and Jim brought it up again, was, the private sector or whatever. I think we have to be very, very, very careful in this, And again, the PUD actually empowers the municipality and then empower the county and basically give us a greater say, at the end of the day. And I agree somewhat with that, and I disagree somewhat with that. But I'd like to see what municipalities have for their PUDs. Maybe grab a couple out of Will County and actually look at those, and then why reinvent the wheel here? I mean, let's look at something here, and all we want to do is we want to unshackle business actually to develop in Will County. So I just think that it's a slippery slope what we're doing here. I think we have to be very, very careful. If it's done correctly, I think I could support it. But, in the meantime, I'd like to see a little bit more background on it, and I'd like to see some other PUDs for the municipalities. So
a PUD can be very beneficial to the developer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because sometimes you're giving up some other thing that would have been more restrictive to them. So, this is not all zoning authority dictating. It's going to be very beneficial to the developer because they get relief in other areas.
Correct. And I'd like to see maybe Tinley Parks and Orland Parks. I mean, I'd like to see their PUDs, before we go ahead and set ours in stone out there. I mean,
I'd like to look at some Will County communities.
Yeah, well, Orland Park has Will County, and a portion of it.
Orland Park has about 1,000 acres in Will County. It doesn't have a lot. The only thing Orland Park has in Will County is along 183rd Street, and it's all commercial, by the way.
Correct.
Undeveloped. So
that would be a good example of a PUD.
Tinley Park, though, has 10,000 residents in Will County.
Steve, you have a comment?
Yeah, I think the idea of a PUD is good, but I don't like the idea of putting any kind of parameters or restrictions. I think, the developer comes in, like Jim said, and they come and they say this is what they want. We look at it and we say, okay, and then we decide and what we want to change or what we don't want to change. But when you start saying we are going to be limited to X amount of feet for parking, X amount of pumps, no more than 3 buildings inside your structure or whatever. Let them decide, and we can tell them, well, that ain't doing what we want.
But that's how a PUD works. I mean, it's really a collaboration between the
Well,
zoning
yeah.
authority
Well,
and the
that's
developer.
That's what I
Just
did
so you
there. I don't
know,
want to see it harder for a business to come. I want more businesses to come. You know, if we put too many rules on them, they ain't coming.
You can make it easier.
This could not be further from the truth of what a PUD really is. I hear both of you.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, but it could not be further. If you want to go to a community that has almost 2 million acres in Will County, go to New Lenox. We use planned unit development all the time.
So did Frankfort.
It gave us the authority and the power to work with the developer. And the developer, it gave them so many more things. They wanted to go down that path.
But that's what I'm saying. I want to be friendly to the developer.
It's far more friendly to the developer than going through a regular normal process, because I'm telling you, what these individuals have to jump through and the hoops that they have to go through to get everything that they want with multiple uses on one property, they can do it in one sit down, they can come through the process one time, it gives them the authority, and I'm telling you, and it's a lot of give and take. And the builder,
Right, that's what I said. You said it a different way, we agree.
Let's adopt new ones.
You know, it's a collaboration. It's a collaboration that
awesome.
gets the developer's goals, meet the developer's goals as a developer.
Okay, David, do you have a comment?
No, just the zoning ordinance already has established a very robust PUD process.
You know, all that needs to be done, if there's a desire for a PUD for these types of uses, is to put that into that mill.
Okay, I think we've had enough discussion. Let's send this out for public hearing, and we can refine it some more if we have additional changes down the road.
I said the same thing you did.
Any
You
objections?
get a lot of
to
good
that?
information in a public hearing, too.
Okay, we'll send it to public hearing. Next item is the Historic Preservation Agency grant program. Jeanine?
Thank you. So the CLG, or Certified Local Government Grant, is something that we've been receiving annually since the year 2000. And before you today is the 2016 grant. It would allow us to continue our rural historic structural survey in both Crete and Will townships simultaneously. In December, WJE with Janie Elsner was the consultant who was awarded the bid by the county board to complete those surveys in both of those townships. It was resolution 15-382. We received notification that we received the grant award on May 30th, and we have budgeted for this in our remaining budget for this year and for our FY17 budget. So at the July 6th HPC meeting, the commission voted unanimously to accept the grant and to enter into the agreement with IHPA. So today I'm requesting your approval to accept the grant and to allow the county executive to enter into the grant agreement with IHPA.
We have a motion to approve. Motion? Second? Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the designating the Monique Creamery as a historic landmark.
Yes. So before you today is the nomination of the Monique Creamery. It's also called the Monique Cheese Factory in the village of Monique. The structure is located at 5162 West Court Street in this village of Monique, and the owner is the village of Monique, who supports this designation. They passed ordinance 1740 on January 13th of this year, authorizing us to designate the structure. The structure was nominated for 8 criteria, and staff supported 6. The commission supported staff's assessment. The creamery was historically a cheese factory and was built around the 1870s. It is the only fully limestone structure extant in the village of Monique. It is also one of the last remaining cheese factories or creameries within Will County. They've been disappearing for several years now. A public hearing was held on July 6th at the Historic Preservation Committee meeting, and there were no public comments or no objections, and the commission voted unanimously to approve or recommend approval of the nomination of the creamery. So today I'm requesting your approval of the nomination of the Monique Creamery as a Will County landmark.
We have a motion. Motion. Second. Any comments or questions?
I got one comment. We have a couple landmarks out there in Eastern Will County, and The issue that I have is signage, actually telling people where they're actually at. And sometimes they're off a municipal road or owned by a road by municipality, or they're owned by or a state road or a state highway or something like that. I'd like to see if we can find out, maybe we can use a portion of grant money to actually provide signage on it, and work in conjunction with the municipality or the state or whoever it happens to be. Because I've talked to our highway engineer before about doing a sign, along the road there or whatever, to let individuals know where they're at, because they're hidden basically. And I'm familiar with the creamery, I go by there almost daily, so it's nice if you know where it is, but it'd be nicer if we could actually provide more information on where they're actually at. So, if that's something we can look at or whatever, maybe we could do a sign that's, and I think we do have one that's kind of like cookie cutter sign on this. Do we have one, or maybe we could develop one?
We have one through IDOT, so those are the brown signs that you
Correct.
see that will say like historic marker.
Correct.
Or they might say the name of the structure. So those, we have a good relationship with IDOT in getting those installed. I think our most recent one is in Beecher for the Mausoleum.
Mausoleum, that's
off of
correct.
Route 1. It's something I'd have to look into with our highway departments and even, the township road, the commissioners, to see what kind of signs they have available or what we would be able to do, but it's a great idea.
The one there in Beecher, actually, there's one off of Route 1, and then there's also another access off of Indiana Ave. And I talked to Bruce about that, but again, that's inside the, no, that part might be unincorporated. There's a portion of it that is in the municipality. So, but I mean, if we can get something along the lines of a uniform sign, so somebody could see it identify it quickly by the shape and whatever, and say, hey, look, there's one of our historical buildings here, or structures.
Yeah, no, that's
just an
something
idea.
to look into.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Reports, I have no reports. Committee members, any comments? Director, any comments? Any public comment? Motion to adjourn? So moved. Motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.